My name is Hamid Sinno and I am the frontman for Mashroua Layla. Is frontman alright? Is that douchier?
No.
Do you stick to lead singer? When I was growing up in Beirut, there really was no mention of homosexuality in a way that made it okay for me. And I struggled for a really long time with that, and just trying to accept myself and not thinking that I deserve to essentially be thrown off a building, right? It's really rewarding for me when I get messages from queer people in the Middle East telling me that the band makes them feel better about it, makes them feel like they could get empowered, that they could do something like they should or can come out if they want to. And that feels incredible for me because I needed that when I was growing up and I just couldn't find it in Arabic. I feel like the amount of aggression directed at the Arab community and the Muslim community in the US at this point is much more frightening, actually, than the kind of aggression that is addressed towards the LGBT community in Lebanon. This isn't to belittle one struggle at the expense of highlighting the other, but I'm just gonna put it out there that I'm personally more frightened walking down the street here as an Arab than I am walking down the street there as someone who's queer. The stuff that ends up making us want to write is stuff that relates to sort of social criticism and politics, and gender and sexuality is like a really big deal for me, so I tend to constantly write about that. Queer critique of a lot of things does open the floor for the possibility of completely renegotiating society as we know it on so many levels. When you start getting death threats, it's not exactly pretty. It's always just like Twitter trolling and stuff like that. I think the most frightening stuff that happens is actually when people start threatening our audience, and that for me is much more frightening. We come from a community where the only representation that you get of queerness is always very offensive and hurtful, and if anything, it just furthers the isolation and the lack of conversation and the lack of equality. For all of us, I think at different points in our lives, music was like the dream. It's really cool that we're getting more press exposure. I feel like it really does make it a little bit more possible for us to actually accomplish what we're trying to do. Just complicating the narrative when it comes to what the Middle East is and how the Middle East works and what voices do and don't get heard.
You guys doing all right?